America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join in a moment of silence. Very much. Be seated.
The first item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. I'll move it. Second by Radig. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Items 2 through 7 constitute a consent agenda of routine action items to be considered by one motion. Items pass unanimously unless a separate vote is requested by a board member. Item 2 is approval of the minutes of the December 3rd meeting. Item 3 is approval of the claims. Item 4 from the county auditor is approval of liquor license application for Lofted View Events in Bronson. Item 5 from the county treasurer is to approve property tax refund request for parcel ending in 4040 in the amount of $296.50. Item 6 from board administration includes A, approval of resolution thanking and commending Faye Hill for her years of service with Woodbury County. B, approval resolution thanking and commending Mark Nara for his years of service with Woodbury County. C, approval of resolution to appoint Gene Logan as representative of the Northwest Iowa Regional Housing Authority. D, approval to appoint Trayla Lee to the Judicial Magistrate Nomination Commission. And E, approval of lifting tax suspensions for petitioners who failed to recertify their income or income does not qualify for continued tax suspension. And item 7 from Human Resources includes A, approval of memorandum of personnel transactions, B, approval of retiree requests to remain on the Wellmark PPO and county dental family plans, C, approval of retiree requests to remain on the county dental plan, D, approval of the casualty policy with Princeton Express, Excess, and Surplus Lines Insurance Company, and E, approval to create a Human Resources part-time secretary position. Any discussion on the consent agenda?
I'd move it.
I'll second the motion by Taylor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item 8 from Veenstra and Kim Incorporated and Patrick Mao for action. This is a public hearing and approval of engineer's report for creation of Salix Drainage District. When we need to transition to our person on the phone, we can do that at that time, but I'd invite someone up to begin this, introduce this issue. There's also a public hearing element, so if there's any public comment, we'll receive that when the board is ready as well.
Yeah, good evening. Patrick Mao with Veenstra and Kim, and also Salix Drainage District Engineer. So a lot has transpired since we spoke about a year ago, and I would say a lot of good things. So at the last public hearing, was directed to perform an informational meeting with a lot of landowners because there was some concern, I guess you would say, or objections with that. And so we had an informational meeting in January of this year. And the end result is that kind of wanted to start from scratch, I think, and that to begin working with the Farmers Drainage District on an outlet agreement. And so that was finalized in July of this year, that they have a 5-year agreement in place with the city of Salix, not necessarily Salix Drainage District, but the city of Salix is a 5-year pumping agreement. And so there's some stability there. And so the new plan reflects that stability. So it basically is bounded by Poplar, the interstate, Tayman, it's page 12 in the report. I'm drawing a blank on the gravel road to the south. 280th Street is kind of the bounding of the drainage district. Whereas before, it went to Snyder's Bend and, different routes to get there. And so that is no longer being considered. It's kind of, I guess you would say, drastically smaller than what was originally proposed. And so I guess that would probably conclude, my report. I guess for me, I'd recommend a motion to approve the report, but obviously it's a public hearing. So we'll see if there's any objections, if there are any filed objections or if there's any other objections in the audience. So I thank you for your time.
You have a question?
I just want to make sure I understand. Are we filing an approval of the report, or are we just merely receiving it?
Says hearing and approval on the agenda.
Okay.
Yes.
And so by the approval, that action in turn creates the Salix Drainage District?
Correct.
Okay.
I maybe would defer to Brian, who's on the phone.
Would you like to answer that, Brian?
That would be correct.
Okay.
That's my understanding. The agenda, it's submitted for approval, and if you do so, that would create the district.
Thank you.
And if we approve this as proposed, who would oversee the district? Would it be the city of Salix? Would it be the board of supervisors? Would it be trustees? Could we grant that tonight, or is that already in this report?
The action in front of you is to approve the report. There is a code section, this has been talked about, to grant to the city of Salix, or to the council, itself. That would not be a discussion for tonight.
Oh, okay.
It's just to report and create the district. And I would say at that end, then it would still be under your jurisdiction, as supervisors.
Sure.
Okay. So we would be creating the district, and then we would also subsequently decide who is appointed to govern the district. Mr. Taylor.
But that's something, I just want to, as we clarify this, because I know drainage law is interesting, which is why we have an attorney on the phone who specializes in this. We couldn't designate somebody else in and of ourselves. We're taking that on as the Board of Supervisors, being the trustees, until someone else so decides. I mean, we can't mandate somebody else do that. Is that correct? And maybe that's a...
I think 322, and Brian probably could highlight that process.
Okay.
So, yeah, you're correct that if the district is formed, ordinarily the Board of Supervisors would retain jurisdiction unless a private set of trustees were appointed. But in the event that 25% or more of the total area of the established district is within the corporate limits of a city, then the board can, by resolution, transfer to the city control of the entire drainage district. And that is found in Section 468.322 of the Iowa Code. And I think Patrick mentioned earlier that we don't have that on the agenda for this evening, but it does provide that can be done at any time in the future, that resolution. But it would need to, and I'm sure have your county attorney there or assistant county attorney. I think they would indicate to you that it's only appropriate to do that after it's been placed on the agenda.
Is that something, Brian, that needs the consent of those within the city council that would act as trustees? Or is that something the Board of Supervisors can simply mandate is going to be the case based on the percentage of that which is within the drainage district?
Well, the code is silent as to that, but I cannot imagine a situation where the county Board of Supervisors could unilaterally transfer control to the city when the city is rejecting it. I don't know that there's any case authority on it, but the code is silent as to that. So I think that if you just look at it from a practical standpoint, I think you'd have to have the city's consent to do that.
And it looks like that we may have some welcoming motions from the, if that's okay, Mr. Chair, in terms of the mayor. I just want to make sure that if this is created, that it's not something that the board doesn't want to have the responsibility for if the ultimate object is to not act as trustees.
Sure. I think I heard that somewhere in this report is that recommendation. Is that correct? Or it's not something we could actually really discuss or act on, but you can certainly let us know that's what you would want. Yes.
Well, and I'm sure, not speaking for Kevin or anyone else in the room, but if I was one of the farmers that's going to be in the district, I might want to say too. So I don't know. At this point, and you see a farmer nodding his head yes, I mean, it's not on the agenda for today. We probably shouldn't discuss too much on it, deliberate too much on it. But at the same time, knowing how to either designate trustees, because, in all the other drainage districts, we have trustees. It's already been established long before we got on here, other than our esteemed chairman of the grant. township.
Yeah,
I guess
so
it's a
before-
Township, not a drainage district, so it's different, so.
Sorry, Kevin. So if we approve this report tonight, the Board of Supervisors will be overseeing the district. And then from then, some point in the future, we can either designate that to Salix City Council or volunteer trustees, or we could maintain it in perpetuity. So we're just on the report tonight, and then we'll be in charge, and then we can change that at any point in time. But yeah, to Keith's point, we've got rural landowners in here too, and so we don't want to end up with taxation without representation either, so.
So how far I read the report, I saw the report, and I thought it was kind of cool on the bleed-through page, but how far outside of Salix are we going here on distance-wise?
Interstate.
The interstate, okay, so nothing,
So yeah, on page 12 of the report, I don't know if that's readily available, or I could walk up and kind of show
I
you. It was in the
looked at it.
packet, but, so Poplar is kind of the main street through Salix, it connects to the interchange of the interstate. And then on the west would be the interstate itself, is the boundary of the interstate right-of-way. 280th Street is the gravel road that's about a half a mile south of Poplar, and then it actually doesn't continue to the interstate. It stops short approximately a quarter mile to the interstate. And then Tamo, or really the railroad tracks, if you will, would be kind of the eastbound. So it's not even really like a section of ground. It's actually fairly small considering what was proposed roughly a year ago.
so is
But
the
there are,
ground north
there are
of?
landowners. I mean, there are, to the south and west is not Salix that is within the district. That would be ag land currently.
So north of Salix, was there any of that farm ground?
So Poplar is the divide, where to the north is actually the Farmers Drainage District.
Okay.
So right now, now that we've had the introductory comments, we're going to conduct a public hearing and have people come forward. Is that what we're in right now before we approve? Just make sure I'm following the,
Right, it's definitely a public comment period. Did we actually post a time for a public hearing? So it's labeled as such, but it's a public comment period, we can say.
And I guess I would invite Patrick to just explain, for those that don't have the report in front of them, what you guys ended up doing. We talked through all the options, months and months ago. If you just want to briefly talk about what you guys are going to end up doing, how you're working with farmers, that sort of thing.
So I guess going back, we had a objection, that was filed here roughly a year ago. For the original outlet was along 280th Street to the Snyder's Bend, Browns Lake connecting channel. I don't know if I'm saying that correct or not, but it's an overflow channel into Browns Lake. We had an objection letter, and so and they had actually proposed a different route. So in the January meeting, informational meeting, and we had, I'm going to say 50-ish in attendance, at that meeting. It was a fairly large group, here, looking at 3 options or more. And so I came in the meeting with 3 options, and in fairness, no consensus, was met at all. It was more of a matter of, the one that doesn't affect me, I think would maybe be a consensus, and I don't want to pay the tax to build it, and I'm fine the way it is, and really just moving away, no one really wanted on the other side of the interstate. Basically, they were happy with their current drainage and didn't want it basically in their backyard, if you will. And so, but there was a very strong consensus with many farmers, or I would say most of the landowners, and several of them reached out to trustees within the Farmers Drainage District personally. And I also know to supervisors to express that they didn't like how the report was written or any of the 3 options, but rather wanted to see if there could be some collaboration with the Farmers Drainage District. And there had been kind of some shut doors, if you will, between the Farmers Drainage District and the City of Salix regarding a pumping agreement and so forth. And I think that farmer comment period began to kind of open up the discussion, as a beginning discussion, because a lot of them own ground in the Farmers Drainage District that were communicating, or they own maybe the potential of both of these districts. And so we saw I'd say a collaboration, over the next several months after January, February, March, April, of trying to, what different joint meetings, I don't know about joint meetings, Salix Council attending Farmers Drainage District meetings, and an openness to, a 5-year agreement that's in the report. And I would say a verbal of potential for many years to come. Did you want me to try to continue to have the water proceed, to the east as drafted? So does that answer your question, Mark, as far as kind of some history?
Yep.
And hence we are here today with a finalized report.
So now I got a curiosity question on the legal process here we're following. So in Iowa Code 468:14, it says, when any plan and report of the engineer has been approved by the board, such approval shall be entered of record in his proceedings as tentative plan only for the establishment of said improvement. Thereupon it shall enter an order fixing date for the hearing upon the petition not less than 40 days. So are we talking like we're going to approve this and then there's a public hearing? Because it says hearing here, but it's not a noticed public hearing necessarily.
That sounds like a question for
Legal.
Brian Young.
So thank you. The original engineer's report was the one that was submitted for hearing, and which then required the notice to be complied with, which has been done. Then the code provides that the engineer's report can be amended at any time before the final decision is made. And it also provides that the hearing can be continued from time to time. So when you look at the notice that is given, there's an indication in the notice that the matter can be continued, and it can be continued without further notice. And so that you're at the position now where you're dealing with an amended engineer's report in a continued hearing. So we don't have to go back to those original notice requirements because they've already been met. Does that make sense?
I mean, it does, but I've just never experienced it on anything else before, so.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know that we've ever continued something so many times. Usually we have a one and done, and this is like measure twice, cut once. We're measuring 6 times. But I think it's good. It's protracted because we're getting it right, but I would say that's the only difference here.
Yeah.
Well, again, I don't remember the last time a drainage district was created, so.
All right.
And I will say there is nothing that prohibits you from going through that process again, but it is timely and it is expensive. And I don't believe it's legally required at this point, given the procedures that have been followed and the posture of the matter at this point in time.
So I guess any public comment I'd be interested in.
Yes, is there any public comment?
Hi, everybody. Good to see you again. Kevin Nelson, Mayor of Salix. Greg Yoakum is in the audience. He owns the bulk of the farmland that's going to be in the proposed drainage district. The rest of it is owned by Leo Yoakum, his father. Leo is not here. He's off enjoying the sun somewhere down south. I just want to remain consistent, and I fully support the drainage district. If you recall, there was 3 people on the petition, myself, Greg, and Denise Burkhart. Denise couldn't make it tonight, but she told Patrick, and she told me she still supports it, just like she supported it from day one. The City Council of Salix still supports it unanimously, and they would like to take it on from your hands. 468.322 says that, I'm going to paraphrase, but I have it on my phone. If a city has more than 25%, basically you can give it to the City Council to run, even though some of the property is beyond our limits. We would like to do that. It just makes the most sense. My understanding of the law is that if you do that, you have to do a resolution for 468.223, I guess it's the next one, that you have to do a resolution, and it doesn't take effect until after that resolution is approved by you guys. So what if you put it on the agenda for next week? If you approve it tonight, then put it on the agenda for next week to move it to Salix City Council. It could be no less than 30, but no more than 90 days from the date the resolution is passed. So the earliest Salix could take it on is mid-January, per 468.323, I believe it is. So that's what we'd like to have happen. If at some point in the future, say a year from now, 6 years from now, Salix City Council doesn't want to deal with it anymore, we can then pass it off to a board of trustees, just like the Farmers Drainage District, and then they'd be elected in staggered terms, just like the Farmers Drainage District or any other drainage district. But per the laws, like, Salix gets first dibs because we have more than 25% of the property in the proposed drainage district. So, yeah, just here to say, please pass this after years of meetings that I've had with you guys. Not that I don't mind seeing you guys. Anyway, happy to answer any questions, any concerns. Otherwise, I'll turn it over to Greg.
I did want to, praise you for your work on this, because I know it's been a lot of work to get to this point. And I got to say, as a supervisor, kicking it down the road to make it right was probably a very difficult decision for all of us. But I know personally, there was a huge fear, you never know when that river's going to flood, and you never know in ground as flat as Salix is, what could happen. And especially after going through a flood myself now and losing quite a bit of land, I'm very glad that it never happened while we were deliberating and pushing this down the road, because that would have been a burden I wouldn't have wanted, and I worried about. So I'm glad things got pushed through and to where we're at, where we got agreement and it's going to get done.
Yep.
So I just wanted to.
Fortunate to have a drought. I think it's a weird thing to say. It seems like an oxymoron, but fortunate that we've been in a drought situation the last couple of years. So we didn't need to pump or worry about flooding, but maybe the next year is going to be wet and we'll be in the exact same situation as you were in, or Smithland or Correctionville, where's this water going to go? And hopefully this drainage district can help fix some of those problems. So we'll pass it, turn it over to Greg.
Greg Yoakum, 1629 270th Street, Salix. I do agree with this new proposed Salix Drainage District. It was the original map of the area that, Salix needed for drainage. After the whole process, things got out of hand. I'm glad that it finally came back to this. My concern, though, is the 92 acres I have on the south side of Salix, and my dad's 73 acres right next to that. That is part of the drainage district that if the district is handed over to the city of Salix, my dad and I will not have, as Mark said, we won't have any representation, and whatever the city decides on how to assess the drainage taxes to it, we have no vote in the matter. Being that it is, I guess I would recommend that the Board of Supervisors keep control of it or make a trusteeship out of it. Because without any representation, I don't have a place that I live in Salix, so I can't vote for who's on city council. I can't run for city council. I'm just pretty much stuck there, footing the bill with whatever I get dealt with. And I mean, I know, like with the floods at Smithland and Correctionville, a lot of people are dealing with this kind of stuff, and the city ground, 90% of that water drains off and goes into the ditches. 95% of the farmland water that lands on farmland soaks in. So with the city draining past my farm, mine's going to be the last one to drain because theirs is going to be the first one to go. They see more benefit from the drainage than I will. And my concern is, not equal payment, or, get all the school bond issues and everything else gets thrown to the real estate, to the landowners. And at some time that has to stop. It has to be fair. So with that, thank you.
Thank you.
Guess we all got some homework to read in Iowa Code, Chapter 468 tonight, huh?
Anyone else have public comment? Okay. Anyone have any questions for any of the speakers? Yes, Mr. Taylor.
I would just say I'm appreciative of the process that you all have gone through. I remember sitting in this room maybe 14 months ago, really snowy, and a lot of you came in, and we had about 30, 40 people here. And Patrick, you took a lot of slings and arrows that night, but thank you for your patience on it. I think what's good about tonight is that we can approve this, and then that whole idea in terms of the resolution on who should be the trustees will be a separate matter. So I think that makes it easy tonight. And then you all can wrangle about whether or not you want to be trustees for the future, and that makes more sense, or whether it's a city, or then the city in turn creates a district where you feel like you have representation. But it's good that that's a separate matter than
Yeah.
what's in front of us tonight.
So, out of curiosity then, do we got to move to close a continuation of a public hearing, or do we just move to approve the engineer's report?
Mr. Young, do you have any advice for us there?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. I think you can just proceed.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and move the approval of the engineer's report to create the Salish Drainage District.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by Nelson. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Thank you all. We have arrived. All right, we'll move on to item 9 from Planning and Zoning. Mr. Priestley has some action items for us, beginning with item A, approval to receive the final report and the zoning commission's recommendation from their November 25th meeting to approve the final plat of Oak Ridge Addition, a minor subdivision to Woodbury County.
Good evening, Supervisors. Dan Priestley, Zoning Coordinator. This Oak Ridge Addition is a two-lot minor subdivision. It's about 10.26 acres, and they're splitting a house off in a 2-acre fashion. The zoning commission looked through it. Everything looks in order, with the exception they are requesting that a easement agreement be put into place, because between the road right-of-way and the property, there's about 15 or so feet of property that they actually have to cross. And so the landowners have worked it out together to prepare an easement, and that information is in the backup materials, and it looks well in order. So.
I'll move it. Second. Second by Raddick. Hearing no discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item B is approval to accept and approve the final plat of Oak Ridge Addition, minor subdivision of Woodbury County, with the condition that an access easement be executed as presented.
Move it.
I'll second the motion by Raddick. Hearing no discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item C is approval to receive the final report and the zoning commission's recommendation from their 11/25 meeting to approve the final plat of J.W. Collins Homestead, a minor subdivision of Woodbury County.
Again, this is just north of Mobile. The city has waived their extraterritorial review requirements, and it's just a split about 2.2 acres off from an existing piece. And the zoning commission, of course, sends their recommendation to you.
Move to receive.
I'll second the motion by Raddick. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item D is approval to accept and approve the final plat of J.W. Collins Homestead, minor subdivision to Woodbury County. I'll move it.
Second.
Second by Raddick. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I was slightly disappointed. The Oak Ridge boys were not here for that.
What was that?
Yeah, no, I don't know. It was some odd reason. My volume was off, but as I say, I was slightly disappointed that the Oak Ridge boys were not here for item 9A.
I hope
Right.
you all miss that humor in the future.
You can always rewatch these videos. Item 10 is reports on committee meetings. Mr. Raddick?
Actually didn't have anything.
Mr. Taylor? Mr. Nelson?
I met with both of our county engineers this morning. We met with 3 landowners from Smithland who were affected by that levy, and we talked about where we're at currently. We're still waiting on estimates from ISG. We talked about the application for the Iowa grants, their drainage assessments, all those things, and it was a good meeting, and I think we all left kind of understanding where we are, what the timeline is, even though the timeline is kind of vague. We're working it from both angles. I think it was a good thing we didn't approve to do that, deal with the core a month or so back. But anyway, it was good to have those guys there and talk through what their options are. And we'll continue to hope for some outside funding for that. So.
Mr. Bittinger?
Yeah, only thing I have is from the Iowa Department of Corrections, the 3rd District. We had our meeting on Friday. The new director, District Director Jared Noby, spoke and just gave kind of his direction for the new year and where they're going, and just gave us some updates. The department's getting new radios from the state office, from the DOC, for when they do warrant sweeps and go out in the field. So it's going to help with more safety and be able to our DOC officers be able to communicate with the sheriff's office and Sioux State Police, and so that's a good thing. And then just gave updated. There's a lot of consolidated and updated training that's going on across the state, so that there's consistent training being applied to all the different Department of Correction districts. So that's it. Other than that, they're on budget and everything's going well.
Okay. Item 11 is citizen concerns. Any citizen concerns?
Doyle Turner, 2738 200th Street, Mobile. Last week, there was the discussion about the LEC, and Mr. Nelson had made a comment about, maybe we look at not pursuing legal action. I really think, I've been kind of a broken record up here, that we need to mitigate damages, and we need to talk about things in order to mitigate damages. And I really think if we're not going to deal with the corruption that we know is there with Ron Wick and Todd Wick, that we need to look at not spending, $1,000 an hour for attorneys. Because if we don't get that under control, we have it really hampers our case of being able to win against these people that owe us a lot of money if we can't show that we aren't wasting money on hiring people that we don't need. I think everything that the sheriff is doing, he's on a good timeline. I think we are headed in a good way, but we know we're spending money that we shouldn't be spending. And I think what I'd like to see is I'd like to see the board support Mr. Nelson in asking for a no confidence vote in the LEC against Ron Wick. And I'd really like to see this board support Supervisor Nelson in trying to fight things that we know are wrong and that should be corrected. Thank you.
Any other citizen concerns?
Greg Yoakum, again, Salix. I don't plan on being back here next week, but if I do, I will. But I'd like to thank Jeremy and Keith and Mark for your dedication to Woodbury County. Once again, things aren't always easy being up on boards. I think the best decisions that a board can make is when it's a 2-2 tie, and the chairman has to make the decision, because that means everything has been discussed, and it's concerns of the citizens have been looked at, and the best of the county has been looked at. So once again, thank all 3 of you for your time with Woodbury County. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kevin Nelson, Mayor of Salix, 406 Willow Street. Again, I would just like to echo what Greg said. Appreciate everyone that's hitting out of a public service, Jeremy and Keith. It's been a pleasure working with you both. And I appreciate everyone making that vote today to settle the drainage district after 3 years. It's been a long journey. As far as Greg's comments earlier about the trustees, I fully understand your position, completely do. Taxation without representation, because that's kind of what Salix was under with the Farmers Drainage District paying them, but we couldn't be on the board. Whatever course the Woodbury County Supervisors want to take as far as who's running the district, doesn't matter to me. I just want it to be done and get it dug out or all the trees taken out and widened and deepened. So if you guys want to keep it, great. I don't know the rules. You have to talk to your lawyer about can you give it directly to a board of trustees or does it have to go to council? Couldn't tell you. Talk to your lawyer, don't know. But I would reiterate my appreciation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other citizen concerns? All right, item 12, board concerns. Mr. Taylor?
Thank you much, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much for the kind words. Appreciate it very much. Just want to follow up on something from last week, and I want to do so for a couple of reasons. Talked a little bit, and I don't want to get back into numbers or anything, but we have some financial challenges. I think that we acknowledge are not any fault of anyone on this board's, but constraints that are outside of our control. And so the reason I want to bring up this concern in terms of some of the shortfall that we're facing is I'm worried what's happening right now in the legislature. And if you've been following the talk lately under the Golden Dome, they're talking about property tax relief. And I think that that's a very laudable goal. The problem becomes when there's a one-size-fits-all that's going to take place. And this is going to be nothing in comparison to what the constraints were put on us a year or two ago. And so my worry right now, and again, not getting back into all the constraints that we're facing, but I just am worried that those who are the 500-600-pound gargantuans, and meaning those counties that spend in excess of what they should be spending, and this board that's been very fiscally conservative, are possibly going to be put on the same diet once again. And so that's my concern. I hope as you all get into this next budget, I know you're going to have some real challenges, but I also hope that our legislators understand that when they are approaching this board that has been as conservative as can be, that we're not given the same prescription as the other 98 counties. Because if that's the case, my worry is about our fiscal and financial health and our employees. So appreciate that. Appreciate the holiday luncheon. Those of you could be there. And thank you, Supervisor Nelson, for representing us with the governor and being out there in Correctionville. Appreciate it.
Take heed, all legislators listening to this meeting. I mean, we've tried really hard. Mr. Raddick?
Yeah, I did want to say, with the holiday luncheon, that we do that for the employees, and I just, 2 terms here. One of the biggest benefits of being here is getting to know a lot of the employees in Woodbury County and how much, we do appreciate the work you do. And I really thought it was a great meal. Fifth Avenue Catering was our caterer, and I think that went over really well. Mark, I'll definitely miss having you here. I made a comment, this is your last meal at Woodbury County, I guess, but that doesn't mean, you can't come back and visit, though, anytime. I also wanted to bring up the next week, Tuesday, I'm going to put a letter of support on the agenda. It's for CERTS. They have a grant application to look at a satellite location and expansion of operations, basically. So I wanted to give you guys a heads up. I'll be doing that.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson?
Yeah, so I'll kind of segue off of Jeremy's last comment there. So Governor Reynolds came to Correctionville yesterday. Was lined up by the city of Correctionville to talk about the aftermath of the historic flood that we saw back in June. And I was lucky enough to be invited to be out there along with Senator Alons and a representative-elect Travis Sitzman. And so it was a good meeting. We talked about the challenges that Correctionville had during the flood and after the flood as far as their rebuilding process. And we talked about really was infrastructure was a lot of the issues that Correctionville had, their their sewer pumping station was overrun, their electrical substation was overrun with water. They're a community that has very poor cell service, and so trying to communicate with anybody was really poor. And so I really kind of hit the governor on the cell service, because we have multiple communities in the county that, in town, don't have adequate cell service, let alone if you're out in the rural areas. And I come to find out that Verizon is obviously the main carrier here in Woodbury County, but Correctionville had reached out to Verizon on 3 separate accounts during that flooding, asking for a boost tower, and they were denied because they were told they had good service there. The irony in that is, on a nice day, you could stand in the middle of Main Street in Correctionville and not get a phone call out. So we've got serious challenges that face all parts of Iowa when it comes to cell service, and I really think it is a basic necessity, a basic utility. And the governor's comment was that they set aside the money for broadband that has not gone out as fast as they'd like, and that they would like to look at adding to that pot and expanding its use into cell towers. We talked about Sabre in Woodbury County is the largest cell tower manufacturer in the world, and that Iowa should be a model for good cell service, not one of the worst. So that was a good conversation, but then we also talked about House File 718, to Jeremy's comments, that during that flood, and I said this in that meeting, that the only reason we were touring Correctionville and not Anthony and Odo was that our secondary road staff were able to help them build up the berm into the late hours of the night. And we talked about our emergency services, how we stationed paramedics and EMTs on the other side of the river, because we knew that 5 communities in the county were going to be completely cut off from the western part of the county. And those are services that we're really proud of, and that this board, long before me, has found creative ways to fund without taxing our citizenry to death. And I told her that we felt like we were being punished for being fiscally responsible here through that bill, and that not all parts of it were bad, but some parts of it need to be gutted and thought over. And so her response there was that they were open to all tax policy, and they definitely don't want to punish counties that are doing the right thing, and that she'd be open to the legislature looking at anything. So I was able to drive those points home, and we talked about the importance of economic development and growth across the state of Iowa. And, we have to have the ability to provide infrastructure to help things grow too. So all in all, it was a good meeting. The governor can't be everywhere all the time, so it's nice that she chose Woodbury County for a little part of the day. And I think the people of Correctionville really appreciated that. So that was a good meeting. And then I just wanted to touch on just the Rural Route Ramble. A couple of supervisors were asking about that today. We had beautiful weather, and it was one of the craziest things that I'd ever witnessed. We had people that were waiting outside the doors of businesses in some of these small towns before they even opened on Friday morning. We had charter buses, party buses, 15-passenger vans from all over that were coming in here. There was all kinds of out-of-state plates, people from multiple states away that drove up for the weekend, long lines at a lot of these stores, people wanting to check out. And so it was a really positive thing for our rural communities and for Woodbury County and for the outlying counties around here too, because for a lot of them, that was their best weekend of the year. And proud that we can, really host the volunteers in our county and call them ours, that they put that on. So I would encourage folks to go out and check that out next year. They're looking forward to it. In the meantime, I'll be working off all of my wife's debt for the next 365 days. So thank you.
Mr. Bittinger. Got a couple things. First, next week I'll have a letter of support for Camp High Hopes on the agenda. We discussed that might be coming. Secondly, in regards to the swearing-in ceremony and the organizational meeting of 2025, for everyone's information, the swearing-in is required by law to have taken place by noon on January 2nd, and the organizational meeting needs to be on January 2nd at some time. So I got some feedback on the swearing-in time preferred by those that are being sworn in, then I got some more feedback after that. And so we were initially looking at the 2nd at 10:45 with a board meeting following that. However, now I think that we're going to be looking at a 4:15 p.m. Swearing-in time on December 31st, which can take place before the next calendar year. I believe that works for everyone, and if it does not work for elected official, like, for example, the sheriff, they've done their own ceremony with a judge in the past to make sure that works out by the deadline. So that'll be a relatively busy day on Tuesday, December 31st, but that can be taken care of then. For now, the meeting is set at 4:30 like every other Tuesday meeting, but that's something if the board felt compelled to enjoy more of the New Year's Eve holiday, we could discuss that. But we got some other items on the agenda too beforehand, I believe, with an LEC. The LEC authority has their own meeting, and then we'll have the 4:15, approximately 3 minutes for 5 people, I believe, being sworn in should be adequate. So that's the direction for Karen as far as trying to schedule that, unless there was feedback on that scheduling item from anyone. Good? Okay. And then for the organizational meeting, it looks like the afternoon on the 2nd is going to work for the most supervisors. So I would say probably 2 p.m. would be the earliest that would be scheduled. Any feedback on that?
For Tuesday, or for the
For
second, I mean,
Thursday, January 2nd. Yeah.
I'd say, really any time after noon, 1 o'clock should be fine for me.
Okay. Well, let's plan for 2 o'clock. Of course, if there's any issues with that, we can adjust.
And I will check with Shane and Jody as far as the LEC meeting on the 31st, given that's New Year's Eve. I don't know if maybe they're out of town or on break or whatever, so I guess I'll let you know. Because if there's not an LEC meeting, we wouldn't have to push the supervisor meeting clear back in the afternoon. We could do it earlier in the day if we had staff or other people that were looking forward to New Year's Eve or taking off early or something like that. So I'll let you know.
So Karen, please reach out to the judges, and 4:15 for now, but maybe you want to reserve multiple reservations, just stagger them, and just say you can cancel the ones that we don't need. Just kind of appreciate it. All right. We are adjourned.